So a couple of housekeeping rules. So please be sure to that your microphone is muted. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to email us at saxinfo@cde.ca.gov. For a recording of this meeting and prior meetings, please visit the link below. So next, for announcements and information. Local education agency approved indirect cost rates have been posted. And for that, we have Derek.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Yeah. So just the 2024 indirect cost rates have been posted to CDE's indirect cost rate webpage. So on the slide there, we've included the links to the webpage. One thing to mention, so this year, the rates were posted a little bit later than usual. So apologies if that caused any issues for anybody. So we typically try to aim for like the last week in March or at the latest the first week in April to post their rates. But this year, unfortunately, I think we weren't able to post it until like the mid-April or third week in April. So again, apologies for that. So on the next slide. All right, so the next item would be the coding reporting issues that we noticed during our review of the 2022-23 unaudited actual data and the charter school alternative forms review. So this one should be like a separate Word document that was emailed out this morning. So when you have some spare time, like later, we recommend that you go through the entire list. But we just wanted to kind of to go over a couple items this morning. So the first item, which will be on page 4 of the Word doc, and it relates to OPEB costs, other post-employment benefit costs, and that would be SACS object codes 3701 and 3702, which are the allocated OPEB costs that relate to retirees and former employees. So for this one, during our ICR review, we noticed that several LEAs were charging their entire OPEB costs to Function 7200, and that's the other general administration function, and thereby overstating their indirect costs. So for this one, I just want to remind everyone that per CSAM procedure 785, and that's the post-employment benefits other than pensions, that the OPEB costs for retirees and other former employees should be allocated to all functions in proportion to total salaries or total full-time equivalents in all functions. So the next item relates to Goal Code 8600, and that's the county services to districts or other county offices, and that's on page 6. Sorry. So the next item, it's Goal Code 8600, county services to districts or other county offices. So during our ICR review, we noticed that in the function 7200 through 7700 range, and that's the other general administration and IT range, otherwise known as the indirect cost pool. We noticed that a number of county offices did not have any costs charged to Goal 8600. So in each case, we did reach out to the county and question this, and I believe in every case we found out that there were indeed some amount of general administrative costs that were incurred in support of their school districts, but it was just miscoded. It was miscoded instead to the undistributed Goal Code. So we just want to remind everyone again about the proper use of Goal 8600. And the third item I have, the last one I have, is on page 9. And this one, I think I bring up every single time we do this, and it relates to the charter school management organization fees, CMO fees. So for this one, we're still seeing that there are several charters that are charging their entire CMO fees to function 7200, which again overstates the indirect costs. So we just want to remind the LEAs again that the services provided by these charter management companies should be charged in part to all those functions that best reflect the activity, such as the instructional administration function, 2100, the school administration function 2700, or the pupil services function. That's the function 3000 range. And that's all I have. And I think Masha wants to mention a few things that relate to the charter school alt form.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Derek. Before we go straight to the alt form, I want to hop back over to page 8 for just general charter school reporting, because the first issue we have in that section relates to charter schools reporting in SACS and using the alternative form. And that is something we noticed with the LCFF and EPA reporting, whereby the frequently the charter schools are not using Object 8019 to record prior year adjustments. And that triggers a technical review check that asks them to explain the differences. And so here we're pointing everybody to CSAM Procedure 330, the principal apportionment section that directs LEAs to use 8019 for both LCFF and EPA prior year adjustments. And then lastly, the charter school alternative form notes are on page 10 of the Word doc handout. And these are some things that were noted during our reviews. As background, this is the first year of the alternative form UAs being done in the SACS web application, and there were quite a bit of technical review checks added. All of them were at a warning level, which means they required, if they were triggered, they required an explanation. And so some of them over time, we will be converting to fatal errors as everybody gets more trained and used to this type of format. So the first thing that we noted was, and this applies mostly to charter schools that are operated by non-for-profit organizations that have multiple schools. They're using the direct costs outside of the single charter school, and that triggers a technical review check that is asking for the transfers of direct costs between unrestricted and restricted to equal 0. So this is one of those technical review checks that we are considering changing to a fatal, meaning if the transfer of direct cost does not equal 0, then the technical review check will fail, and the LEA cannot export official file. The other thing that we noted that was very common is that, and this perhaps having to do with the learning curve that we have with the new system, is some of the warning TRC's technical review checks required explanations, and the explanations were not adequate. And so we encourage everybody to put thought into those explanations. A lot of times what we saw was notes such as, this will be adjusted during audit, or this is a timing issue, and those kinds of things. Those explanations are not specific enough to explain the TRC. And then the last item is pointing to some of the issues we've had with reporting capital assets and depreciation. And we noticed a lot of cases where LEA would report depreciation but not report a capital assets. So there's some, one of the challenges could be perhaps because the alt form is an abridged version, and it doesn't break out all the relevant object codes. So we are pointing everybody to our charter school alternative form user guide that summarizes section by section what should be reported on every line of the alternative form. And it has quite a bit of mention about capital assets and depreciation reporting. Thank you. I think that's all for me.
Great. Thank you, Derek and Masha. So the next announcement we have is SACS Web System 2024 budget release. So the 2024-25 budget reporting period was released on May 3rd. Also, we're currently working on updating the California School Accounting Manual, also known as CSAM. So as many of you are aware, the last update was in 2019. So now we expect for the updates to be completed by late 2024, early 2025. And some of the updates will include account code and other accounting changes associated with GASB statements, and also updates to the resource codes, new and removing obsolete resource codes. Now for accounting updates. So we have validation tables, and this is from Jody.
Good morning, everybody. First, let me tell you that there was a mistake in the first set of slides that were sent out this morning. It did say that resource 6670, the Prop 28, was changing to subject to unearned revenue, and that was incorrect. So I did send out corrected slides just a few minutes ago. And for those of you who are requesting the slides in the chat, I'll get to you in just a moment. Or you can also send an email to saxinfo@cde.ca.gov, and they will forward you the slides as well. So I'm just doing a quick recap on the validation table update that was included in the May 3rd release of the SACS Web 2024 budget. All of these files are available for download for those LEAs who are still using them in their local systems. They're available on CDE's Valid Codes and Combination webpage. This last update just had two new resource codes, 6620 for the reversing opioid overdoses and 7034 for the child nutrition commercial dishwasher grant. And those are both effective for 23-24. We also opened Resource 6770, the Arts and Music and School Prop 28 funds to Fund 12, the Child Development Fund. And that is also effective 23-24. Next slide, please. And we added a few end dates, 3180 for NCLB Title I School Improvement. The last available fiscal year for that is 24-25. And then the rest here, 3215 for the Governor's Emergency Education Relief, Learning Loss Mitigation, 5653 for the Project Serve, and 5654 for the Restart Program. They all end with the last fiscal year of 23-24. And here is where the mistake was made in the original slide. So it's actually Resource 6334. For the California Community Schools Partnership Act, the Technical Assistance Center contact. That has now changed from fund balance to subject to unearned revenue. So some of the codes, the fund balance codes have been ended and object for unearned revenue has been opened. So again, the corrected slides are out there. I'm sorry for the panic that may have caused some of you. It's what I get for doing things the last minute, so I apologize. And if you have any questions, please send them to SACSinfo. Again, these are already included in the SACS budget release, and they are available for download on CDE's website. So I think that's it. And I forget who is next.
Oh, thank you for that, Jody. And our next presenter is Hillary with the Every Student Succeeds Act per pupil expenditure reporting update.
Thanks, Rico. So the Every Student Succeeds Act per pupil expenditure, or ESSA-PPE, reporting has been completed. And thank you so much to all the LEAs that participated. We had almost 100% participation. So thank you so much for getting your data in. I identified a few common issues that I wanted to just present now, but they will obviously be gone into at greater depth when the time comes to report next year's ESSA-PPE in just a few short months. So a few things that I identified were that the LEA level expenditures, which is the box on the bottom, didn't include the school level expenditures on occasion, or sometimes were grossly different than the total expenditures per pupil at the school level. And when we see differences such as this, which show LEA level expenditures being $79,000 per student, while the total expenditures per pupil ranged from $2,000 to $65,000 per student for the LEA. It causes us to have a few questions, so I just wanted to draw that to your attention. We also noticed that on occasion the LEA level per pupil expenditures didn't match that aggregate, so that's where that range comes in. And finally, we also noted that several LEAs weren't reporting excluded expenditures, and there is an expectation that all LEAs will have some excluded expenditures. And we are, of course, open to discussing that with you if your data is identified for review with next year's reporting cycle. Can we see the next slide, please? Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the report's been finalized and the data is being prepared for inclusion in your LEA's LARC or local agency report card. And your LEA will receive reporting instructions in November. Even though you do receive the reporting instructions in November, we strongly encourage LEAs to wait until after the webinar because that's where we share the important updates that they need to consider when completing your ESSA PPE reporting. If you do have any questions, please reach out to the ESSA PPE email address at essappe@cde.ca.gov. It is monitored year-round, just not as regularly as it is during the regular ESSA reporting cycle. So I will be checking that if you do have any questions as you prepare for next year's reporting. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Hillary. So next we have the school level finance surveys update. And with that, we have the new webpage has SLFS information presented in our prior SACS forums and a 14-minute video explaining the new requirement, a copy of the CDE notification about the requirement, which was sent out to all superintendents and CPOs. Additionally, this site includes a link to frequently asked questions, in which we have included questions we received as of early May. And the new SLFS webpage is available at https://www.cde.ca.gov/fg/ac/fs. Next, we have the ESSA PPE application that will capture the SLFS data. So the CDE has been working with its developers to modify the existing ESSA PPE reporting application to capture the SLFS data. Once the modifications have been completed, the CDE will create a video tutorial to familiarize users with the application. Next, we have the fiscal year 2023-24, which we refer to as the collection window of December 2024 to March 2025 requirement. So for that, as a friendly reminder, for the collection window of December 24 to March 2025, the LEAs will need to provide the total current expenditures, both school level and central, for NCES function 1000, which is known as instruction, for each of its schools. Crosswalks have been created and are available at the new SLFS webpage to assist LEAs in converting NCES functions to SACS functions. So for example, in the crosswalk, it states that in order to calculate NCES function 1000, an LEA will need to obtain the sum of SACS function codes 1000, 1110, 1120, 1130, and 1190 for total current expenditures at the school level and the share of central expenditures. We have received a few questions, and I wanted to touch upon some of those commonly received questions. So the first question that we get commonly is, when does SLFS requirements start for fiscal year 23-24? And the data collection will begin December 2024 to March 2025. Second common question we get is, my charter school does not use SACS to report financial data to CDE. How can we submit data for this new requirement? Charter schools can use their existing ESSA PPE methodology to determine the calculations for the SLFS. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at a dedicated mailbox, which is slfs@cde.ca.gov. Next, we have Child Care and Development Programs transferred to the Department of Social Services. A reminder, and our presenter is Blanche.
Thank you, Rigo. Good morning, everyone. So just a quick recap, Senate Bill 98 in 2020 did authorize the transfer of many child care and development programs from CDE to DSS. Just as a reminder, LEAs may continue to use existing resource codes established for the established programs that we already have. But we've noticed recently there's been more questions from LEAs asking about PCAs established by Department of Social Services and that they are not in SACS query for those existing resource codes. For example, resource 5035, quality improvement activities, and another one was resource 5025 for the general child care and development request contracts. As a reminder, those existing resource codes, CDE will not update new funding that are administered by DSS and SACS query, as we don't have access to the funding information. And also, as a general rule, CDE only assign resource codes for programs that are administered by CDE. And also for the newly established DSS administered childcare programs, LEAs would use resource codes 5160 for federal program or 6160 for state programs. CDE also established locally defined codes specifically for the DSS administered programs to allow LEAs to further track at a local level. But LEAs must roll up to resource 5160 or 6160 when reporting financial data to CDE, as only those resource codes are valid resource codes in the SACS. And for further information, LEAs can refer to the DSS Childcare and Development webpage listed below. And if there are no further questions, I'll pass it back to Rigo.
Thank you, Blanche. Okay, now to the accounting discussion. So for the accounting discussion, so for this process, it's not that common that we do accounting discussions in this format, but we're going to try something new. So I'm going to read the background, present the question. It was also emailed to the participants. And after I read the question, I'm going to open it up. So whoever raises their hand, I'll be able to unmute you and you'll be able to comment on this question. And so this is for the arts and music in schools. So we have, so the background. So Proposition 28 has several reporting requirements, both at the school site and the local education level. One of the reporting requirements at the LEA level is the expenditure report. The expenditure report requires LEAs to report to the CDE the amount of unexpended funds by October 1st after the 3-year expenditure spending period concludes or 60 days after ceasing operation. Charter schools only. The CDE suggested 2 options to demonstrate compliance. The first one, using locally defined SACS resource codes to differentiate expenditures by allocation fiscal year. And 2, using a locally defined SACS function or GO code to identify all arts education program expenditures, regardless of the funding source. So our question to you participants is, like, how is your LEA differentiating expenditures by allocation fiscal year? So with that, let's see, we have 3 participants have raised their hands. Let's see. Okay, first one that I have is Sarah Lamfeld. Let's see. Okay, Sarah, if you could please unmute yourself. Okay, so we'll get back to Sarah. So now it's Cassidy. Hello, Cassidy. Hello, Cassidy. Oh, appears you are unmuted. Okay. Let's go to Matt. Okay. Hello, Matt. I think when I select the option that says ask to unmute, you should receive a message at the top. I believe it's at the top, and just please click the permission button, and that should allow you to speak. Okay, Matt. Okay, let's go to Nicole.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Nicole. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Nicole.
good.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Nicole from San Joaquin County Office of Ed. We've had this discussion with our districts and we use Escape as our financial system. So one of the ideas is using the year code to keep track of the fiscal year of the expenditures, since you can be spending multiple allocation years in one fiscal year. And so as far as keeping track of all arts programs, kind of the same idea as CDE, where we could use function or goal code to be able to pull those for all art education. But as far as the 6770 resource, our idea was either if you're smaller, you could use Excel if you wanted to, but for our larger districts, using the year code.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole.
Mhm.
Okay, and also with Nicole's statement, I'd like to read the email that we received from Terry, and her email says like, I wanted to let you know that we use Project Gear for the Prop 28 funding. For funding received in the 23-24, we use Project Gear 4, and in 24-25 funding, we use PY 5. So in 24-25, if we have both years funds, then we'll have 6770-4 and 6770-5. And it keeps the funds separate and tracked that way. Also, our system tracks cash to the fund resource project year level. And we do have the same for Title I, since it's the same concept. So thank you, Terry, so much for that email. Next, we have JG. Okay. Hello, JG. Can you please tell us your full name and the LEA that you're from? Okay, JG. Can't be. Might be some sort of issue. I'm gonna press one more time. Ask to unmute. You should be receiving a message on your screen. Please select that message. Okay. On to Angela West. Hello, Angela. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect. I can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I had actually questioned because of using the locally defined SACS code, we were hoping that we could use like 67, 71, 72, 73 to be able to track easier, but it sounds like that's not necessarily an option or what was intended as a locally defined code. We may end up using year, but if you look at CSAM, this year would actually be a year 6 because of the project ending year is 25, 26, I believe is my understanding. So I think there's just confusion out there, and I think it's going to be especially hard for our person that is allocating the funds every year, especially if different districts are using different methodologies. So we're trying to get out ahead of it, but it's been a little confusing.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback, Angela.
Yeah.
And Angela, I'm sorry, which LEA are you?
I'm sorry, it's Humboldt County Office of Ed.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. JG, I still see you have your hand up, so I'm gonna try it one more time. And after that, I'll switch over to the Q&A to see if there's any questions pertaining to this discussion question. Okay. So with that, we have no more lower everyone's heads. So let's see what we have for Q&A. Let's see. So Kay, thank you, Kay, for your comment. We have, she states, we are using the project year to differentiate expenditures for Prop 20. Thank you for that. We are considering using the budget reference field of the budget string to differentiate expenditures by allocation fiscal year. What are your thoughts on this? Budget reference field. I am not familiar with a budget reference field in association to SACS. So perhaps that's a local financial system function. But we'll get back to this question. Let's see. Another anonymous, we have, could we please have a few resources, for example, 6770, 6771, and 6772 to differentiate the years? They could all roll into 6770 in SACS. Using year codes is not ideal, especially when tracking multiple schools within a district. Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. That will be noted. We have David. Thank you, David, for your comment. Regarding Prop 28, use locally. Oh, let's see, where did you go, David? Oh, here we go. Use locally defined resource codes, or can LEAs use the resource project year code? Or use the resource project year. So right now, like we did provide the initial guidance, and we're trying to gauge the what other LEAs are doing, so we could either expand on the guidance that we provided previously, or kind of make it more restrictive. So we are trying to identify the best way forward, and so we're still trying to answer this question, David. See, Michelle. Okay, presentation slides. We recommend, so this is Norma Alvarado. We have recommended the same year code for tracking. Thank you, Norma. Okay. Using year codes. Okay, here we have another comment. Using year codes has been challenging because different districts use different year codes. For example, some use year 0 for current year, some are using year 4 for 23-24, and some are using year 6 for grant years ending in 2025/26. Yes, like we are aware of that situation, and thank you for your comment. Kimberly Smith says, is anyone using a specific goal for all arts and music, no matter the funding source? So please, if you have a response to Kimberly's question, please feel free to add it to the chat. Okay, Eric, we have I cannot speak Sorry about that. But my suggestion for Prop 28 is first in, first out. Spend the first grant, then move to the next. I can even classify prior year expenditures with the project year code. However, if we change the resource code for staffing or for our sites to make purchases, that is too cumbersome for the schools to learn a new account each year, and for us to teach and set up and reuse accounts when it's not necessary. The reporting each year or at the end, we think internally track the costs. Thank you, Eric. Budget reference is in our system is a project year classifications. Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see. Oh, let's see. We are using several different goals with the following description: art, music, dance, and drama. Okay. We use LEA defined function codes for all arts and music expenditures, LEA wide. And Jareen, we use goal 1120 for art and 1250 for music, regardless of the funding. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your comments. And as was mentioned, if you would like to continue to participate in this conversation, please send us an email to saxinfo@cde.ca.gov. And we'll be.
Rigo, can I chime in real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
Just a follow-up question that can be sent to us in the chat or through SaxInfo for those that are requesting this additional codes in the 6770 range. Just a thought, if this was something that would be considered, how many locally, how many of those codes would be needed? So that's one, just a request, just something to think about. And then also, as far as reporting expenditures, the department did post some worksheets on our website, and we'll provide a link to that shows how the auditing will be done, and it shows how to correlate the year of expenditure to the year of allocation. So that might be helpful to some of you on some of the questions that were asked about year of expenditure versus a year of allocation. So I'll put a link to that in the chat real quick. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Masha. And once again, thank you everyone for participating in this accounting discussion. Next. So we have the SACS financial reporting. And with that, we don't have anything major to report besides what was mentioned at the release that occurred on May 3rd. So no other items. The next meeting is scheduled for November 5th, 2024. And with that, we'd like to conclude our SACS forum meeting. Thank you so much for the participation. Greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions, please email us at saxinfo@cde.ca.gov.
There we go. I just wanted to, this is Jody again, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask a question really quick. I got a lot of requests for the slides this morning, and they are sent out to a listserv. And so I was just curious if everyone isn't, or those of you who requested the slides, if you're not part of that listserv. And if so, I'm going to put the link, I'm going to try to put the link in the chat. I will also put it in the SACS forum meeting notes. And so you guys can get on that email list to try to save some of that. So that's it. And again, I want to mention the mistake in the first set of slides sent out for resource 6770. And if any of you share out the slides, just to be sure to share out the corrected version that was sent out. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jody. And thank you everyone once again for participating. Have a good day.